I was still holding my diploma when I learned the truth. My family hadn't gotten stuck in traffic on my graduation day. They were at a backyard BBQ laughing around a grill while I stood alone in my cap and gown. 2 days later, my mother showed up at my apartment, calm as stone, and told me I owed them $20,000 for raising me. I thought that was the moment everything snapped between us. I was wrong. The real breaking point came when they returned with a truck and discovered something they never expected. Would you believe what happened next? Stay with me to the end. My name is Savannah, and for most of my life I believed that if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, and carried enough of the weight, my family would finally see me. I grew up in a small corner of Seattle where the walls were thin, the bills were always late, and love sounded more like responsibility than comfort. I learned early that being the older daughter meant filling in the gaps no one talked about. By 15, I was wiping tables at a neighborhood diner to help cover utilities. By 17, I was buying my own school supplies. And by the time I got into college, I was already used to hearing my mother say, "You're old enough to figure it out," whenever I asked for help. She never said it with anger, just expectation, like it was the most natural thing in the world that I should carry what she chose to put down. Meanwhile, my younger sister floated through life like it was designed for her comfort. If she needed a ride, someone dropped everything. If she needed money, it appeared. If she wanted attention, she got it without asking. I used to think she deserved it because she was the sweet one, the baby of the family. Later, I realized she was just the one our parents liked more. My apartment now is nothing fancy. One-bedroom thin carpet, a second-hand couch that sags slightly in the middle. But it's mine. Every piece of it was paid for with my own hands' shifts at the cafe that left my clothes smelling like roasted beans, late-night grading sessions from my teaching assistant job hours spent juggling two worlds just to keep this little space afloat. When I open the drawer beside my desk, I see stacks of payments and bills, proof of how hard I fought to make it through college without sinking. People think graduation is a celebration. For me, it was a countdown. Every morning leading up to that day, I told myself, "They'll come this time. They have to." I imagined my mother holding a small bouquet, my father awkwardly proud, my sister rolling her eyes but still pretending to care. I even picked a spot where I hoped they'd stand for photos. The sunlight hit that corner beautifully, but things with my family are never that simple. 2 days before the ceremony, my sister asked where I planned to eat afterward. I told her anywhere cheap was fine, and she laughed like it was a joke. My mother didn't ask about the ceremony at all. She only asked what time I worked that weekend. They never once said they were proud of me. I should have known something was wrong. I should have felt that familiar hollowness in my chest that always warned me when disappointment was coming. But hope is a stubborn thing, and I held on to it anyway. If I had known what was waiting for me after graduation, what my family would demand of me, I would have braced myself differently. Graduation day was supposed to feel like a beginning. Instead, it felt like standing in the middle of a crowded street while everyone else moved past me. I arrived early, hoping that for once my family would too. I kept smoothing the front of my gown, adjusting the cap that never sat straight, and glancing toward the entrance every few minutes. Each time the doors opened, my heart jumped, and each time it wasn't them, the jump got smaller. When the ceremony started, I tried to convince myself they were just running late. Maybe parking was a mess. Maybe my mother forgot something at home. Maybe my sister overslept. I found excuses the way desperate people find air, fast, shallow, and barely enough. But when my name was called, I stepped onto that stage, looked out into the crowd, and saw hundreds of faces, none of them familiar. The applause washed over me, warm but empty. I smiled anyway. I always smiled. It was easier than letting anyone see the truth. Afterward, I waited outside near the big fountain where all the graduates were taking photos with their families. I held my diploma, tracing the embossed lettering with my thumb, pretending I wasn't checking my phone every 15 seconds. My mentor from the university found me and offered to take a picture with me. I forced a laugh and said, "They're on their way." It felt like lying with a knife pressed just under my ribs. 20 minutes passed, then 40, then an hour. The campus emptied around me, laughter fading as graduates left with their loved ones. My mentor looked at me with a softness that made my throat tighten. I told her I was fine. I wasn't. I don't know what made me open social media. Maybe I needed a distraction. Maybe some part of me needed proof of what I already suspected. The first thing on my feed was my sister's story, a backyard BBQ smoke rising from the grill, people cheering as someone flipped ribs, music blasting. The caption stretched across the screen like a sentence, family first. I stared at it long enough that the world went quiet. Not angry, not heartbroken, just numb. That cold, floating kind of numb that leaves you feeling weightless and heavy at the same time. I didn't hear from them that night. Not the next morning either. When my mom finally texted, it wasn't congratulations. It wasn't, "We're proud of you." It was, "Call me when you get a chance." I called during a short break at the cafe the next day. The espresso machine hissed behind me, customers murmured in line, and my own heartbeat filled the silence between rings. She picked up on the third one. Her tone was strangely calm, almost rehearsed. She said she and my dad had been thinking about my future. They wanted me to step up more. They felt I should give back. I didn't understand what she was getting at until she finally said it word for word, the same way it would appear later in the thumbnail that strangers on the internet would see. "You owe us $20,000 for raising you." There was no anger in her voice, no embarrassment. It was as casual as asking me to bring milk home. I thought I misheard her. I asked her to repeat it. She did even slower this time, like I was the one being unreasonable. I stepped outside into the alley behind the cafe, leaning against the cold brick wall as she kept talking about sacrifices, about how raising a child wasn't free, about how my sister needed new things and they were tapped out. For the first time, something inside me shifted. Not a snap, not yet. Just a quiet click, like the first tooth of a lock turning. If I had known how far they would push after this, how bold, how entitled I might have walked away right then. But the real turning point was still waiting only 2 days ahead, sitting heavy in the back of a truck, rumbling toward my apartment. For the rest of that day, her words clung to me like smoke. $20,000. Not requested, expected, as if my entire childhood was a tab I'd forgotten to settle. I walked home after my shift with the kind of tired that settles in your bones, the kind you can't sleep off. Inside my apartment, I sank onto the couch and stared at the folders stacked beside my desk. Payments, bills, tuition statements, loan records, all the proof of every hour I had worked, every sacrifice I had made, just to stay afloat. I opened the drawer and pulled them out one by one, laying them across the table like cards in a game I never agreed to play. 4 years of late-night shifts. 4 years of buying the cheapest groceries I could find. 4 years of doing everything alone. If anyone owed anyone, it wasn't me owing them. But guilt is stubborn. It moves like a shadow. Even with the evidence in front of me, I could still hear my mother's voice in my head, steady and certain. "You should be grateful. We raised you. That's worth something." I sat there for hours long after the sun slipped behind the buildings, trying to figure out how a family could look at their daughter and see a bill instead of a person. For a moment, I almost convinced myself to let it go, to avoid confrontation like I always did. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from my sister we talked. "Mom said you'll pay it. Just send it this week so we can cover some things." Some things, meaning her things, her wants, her lifestyle. I put the phone face down and let out a breath that felt like it had been held for years. I wasn't angry yet, not in the explosive way. It was quieter, sharper, the kind of anger that steadies your hand instead of shaking it. That was when I realized the collapse had already happened. Not between me and them, but inside me, every excuse I'd ever made for them, every justification, every scrap of hope that they might someday show up when it mattered. It all fell apart in that moment, and in the empty space that collapse left behind, something new settled in. A boundary, a line. I picked up my phone and typed a single word. No, I didn't add explanations. I didn't soften it. I didn't apologize. Minutes later, my mother called. I didn't answer. She called again, then again. The tone of her voicemail shifted each time from confused to annoyed to furious. My father tried next, his voice stern, demanding. I put the phone on silent and watched the calls stack up like proof of their entitlement. The next morning, I woke to a final message from my mother. "If you won't pay, it said we'll come get what we need." For a second, I thought she meant furniture or appliances, something practical. But when she added, "We'll bring the truck," a cold knot formed in my stomach. They weren't coming to talk. They were coming to take. And for the first time in my life, I felt something powerful rise in me. Not fear, not guilt, but readiness. If they were bringing a truck, they were about to learn exactly what I had left for them. They showed up on a Saturday morning just after 9, when the hallway of my building was usually quiet except for the hum of someone's dryer down the hall. I heard the truck before I saw it, the low, heavy rumble vibrating through the thin walls like a warning. When I stepped to my window, I saw it parked across the sidewalk, blocking part of the entrance. My mother sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed. My father climbed out first, tugging at the tailgate as if he owned the entire street. My sister followed, phone in hand, recording like she was about to witness entertainment. For a moment, I just stood there, watching them from the second floor, feeling the familiar pull in my chest, the old instinct to shrink, to brace myself to get ahead of their mood before it hit me. But something in me stayed perfectly still, like the calm before a storm I was finally ready for. A knock rattled my door. Not polite, not hesitant. My mother's voice followed, sharp and clipped. "Savannah, open up. We're not playing games today." I opened the door only halfway. My mother pushed it wider without asking, stepping inside as if the apartment was her property. My father came in behind her, already scanning the room as if deciding what he would take first. My sister lingered at the doorway, the camera still rolling. So my mother said, looking around like she was disappointed by how tidy everything was, "Let's make this easy. You owe us $20,000, you said no, and now we're here to collect what balances that out." Her casual tone was worse than yelling. It was entitlement distilled, delivered like a business transaction she'd already decided was final. I stepped back toward the table where I'd laid everything out the night before. Payments, bills, tuition statements, loan records, proof, the paper trail of 4 years of survival. "You're not taking anything I said," my father scoffed. "You don't decide that." "Yes," I said quietly, "I do." My mother's eyes narrowed the way they always did when control slipped out of her fingers. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I reached for the folder and set it on the table, flipping it open so they could see. "Everything I paid," I said. "Everything you didn't." My sister lowered her phone a little, her expression shifting as she realized this wasn't going the way she expected. My mother crossed her arms, impatient. "We're not here to argue math, Savannah. It's not math," I said. "It's truth." I picked up the stack and handed my father the first set of statements. "Here, rent, not a single month from you. Another stack, utilities, groceries, my textbooks, nothing from you. Another, tuition payments, scholarships, jobs I took while you told me to figure it out." My father flipped through them, his face tightening. My mother didn't reach for anything. She just stared at me like she was waiting for me to break. But I didn't. Then came the moment I'd planned for. A knock at the door behind my sister. She turned, startled. Standing there was my mentor from the university, hands clasped, expression steady. I had called her that morning, quietly asking if she could stop by. She'd seen everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, everything my family didn't show up for. She stepped inside. "Is everything okay here?" My mother bristled. "This is a family matter." My mentor looked at me instead of her. "Savannah asked me to bring something." She pulled out a sealed envelope and placed it gently on the table. Confirmation of her academic records and financial aid history. My mother flinched just slightly. I opened the envelope so they could see the summary inside. My scholarships, my work-study hours, the support the university provided, the part-time wages documented, every piece of evidence showing how little they had contributed. My father's jaw clenched. My sister lowered her phone entirely now. My mother tried one last card. "We still raised you," she snapped. "That has value." I met her eyes. "Then why didn't you show up for the one day that value mattered? Silence. Real silence. The kind that flattens everything in the room." My mother's face hardened. "Get your things," she told my father. "We're leaving." My father didn't move at first. He kept flipping pages even though he wasn't reading them anymore. Finally, he set them down and walked out without another word. My sister lingered, looking at me like she wasn't sure what to say. Eventually, she followed them, the phone limp in her hand. From my window, I watched them climb into the truck. The engine started, the tailgate slammed, and then slowly the truck pulled away empty. They had arrived ready to take pieces of my life with them. They left with nothing. When the truck disappeared down the street, the quiet in my apartment felt different, lighter, almost weightless. I closed the door slowly, letting the latch click like the final note of a song I'd been trying to end for years. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel obligated. I didn't feel like a debt someone else was waiting to collect. I felt free. I gathered the folders on the table not because I needed the proof anymore, but because they finally meant something new. My survival, my work, my life. Later that afternoon, I walked to the hardware store nearby and bought a new lock, the kind with a solid click and a clean finish. As I installed it, the metal felt cool under my fingers, grounding steady. When the deadbolt slid into place, it felt like drawing a line across my entire past. In the days that followed, I kept waiting for the familiar tug of guilt to return, but it didn't. What stayed instead was a steady, quiet pride proof that choosing myself wasn't selfish, just overdue. My family may have walked away empty-handed, but I walked forward with something they could never take back: my boundaries, my future, my voice. If this story hit a nerve for you, tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe.